Okay, so we are here today to talk about dreams as visionary experience, and we are here today to talk about dreams as visionary experience and to talk about cultivating dream work. Visionary experiences are not merely the realm of artists and mystics. We all have visionary experiences every single night, whether or not you remember them. So what I want to talk about today is how to cultivate a practice. I'm very practical, and I really like figuring out ways to draw this experience out and work with it and make it a way of contacting the visionary. So we'll talk a little bit about that, about different practices, about really practical approaches. And then we're also going to all tonight participate in the Onera Nauticum. The Onera Nauticum has been going on now for a couple years, and it happens once a month, so it's tonight. And there's a couple thousand people worldwide who participate. And what happens is there's a blog, and I'll give you all the information about it. And once a month, I choose a different onerigen, and an onerigen is anything that promotes vivid dream experiences. So it might be something you take, it might be a sound, it might be a scent, it might be a practice that you do. And I post on the site what this month's date and onerigen will be, and then all the participants worldwide either get the RSS feed or the mailing list, or they check the blog and they find out what the onerigen is, and then everybody gets it, and then they all do the onerigen on the same night. So we have participants, we have a lot of people in Australia, across Canada and the States. We have some Europeans, we have some people in some pretty far-flung places. We got a guy in Oman, I got a couple people from Africa who are pretty active participants. And then there's usually a central group of people who kind of hold down the core space by sleeping in the same area together. And so tonight that's us. So we're holding down the fort for this worldwide dream incubation group. So I have a whole bunch of onerigens up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk for a little bit about dream practice, and then you can ask a couple questions, and then I'll break, and we can come up here, and you can choose which, and I'll describe them, you can choose which onerigen you want to work with, and you can take that away. And I'll talk also a little bit at the end about not only how to work with the onerigens, but also how to work with them in this festival environment, and whether that's exactly what you want to do. Okay, so first I'm going to talk a little bit about cultivating visionary dream practices. In 350 BCE, Aristotle wrote this treatise called On Dreams. I mean, it's a very long time ago, but it's an amazing treatise and still one of the most true and interesting things about dreams I've ever read. And the question that Aristotle posed in this treatise is, why is it when we're dreaming that we have perceptions even though our perception mechanisms are shut down? So why do we hear a bell ring or see a ball bounce even though we can't hear anything or see anything? And so what he posited is that what we have, all of us, is an internal replica of the external world, right? So right now, think about where you live, right? Your house or your apartment or something. Think about walking in the front door and whatever room is first on the right. Go in that room, look around, think about what it's like. So what you just did is you just interacted with your own internal version of what is the real space. And probably in your mind, when you're thinking about what was in the room, you privilege certain things. and not other things, right? So maybe you remember the windows is a little bigger than they actually are. Or you didn't really think about the garbage can, right? It's the same way that we're always, that our own filters kind of create the world that we see, right? I mean, everyone has their own preferences of what they see and what they don't see. I live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of cats, and I like cats. And I have a friend who lives in the neighborhood who works at a hot rod magazine. And one day we were talking, and I said, we were talking about some location. I was like, oh yeah, that's where those 2 calico cats live in that garden. He's like, what? No, it's where the 67 Camaro is in the driveway. And so talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, there's the house with the Siamese cat on the porch that goes meow meow and wants you to come and pet it, and the house with the black cat who's really friendly. And he's like, oh yeah, and there's the house, you know, with the Mopar, and the house with the... And so we exchanged these mental maps, and suddenly I lived in a neighborhood full of cool cars, right, which I just had never seen before. So your own filters, I mean, that's a really trite example of something that's much deeper, right? You know that your own filters kind of create this world. So what Aristotle said is that when we're working with the imagination, with the intellect, or with the dream, we're not, or with memory, we're not actually interacting with the external world, we're interacting with this duplicate world that we have inside of us. So the senses of perception are perceptions of this internal world. And in modern science, you know, neurology sort of says the same thing, really, in different terminology, talking about areas of brain and brainwaves. But a lot of these ideas actually really hold a lot of water if you reframe them that way. So in your dream world, you're really interacting with this, or if you believe Aristotle, which I think it's a lovely model, you're interacting with your internalized world, your internalized universe. And your internalized universe is a very, very deep and visionary place, full of all of the experiences and memories and thoughts that you have had in your life. I mean, it's this amazing experience that is inside of you. And dreams really bring it forward. So how do you develop a relationship to this? How do you work with it? I'll talk about a few ways. So a couple years ago, Dale Pendle and I were doing a workshop together with some other people talking about visionary practices. And I was talking about dream, and he was talking about psychedelics, poison path. And we came up with this, this term, interdimensional smuggling. And what interdimensional smuggling is, it's grabbing something from one realm and bringing it into another realm. So a symbol, or a feeling, or an experience. I started working with this pretty early on in Oneironauticum. There was one, for one of the early Oneironauticums, we were working with Tibetan Buddhist dream practices, dream yoga, which I'll talk about a little bit. And the night before the Oneironauticum, I had this dream that I was on a hill behind my house, which doesn't exist, and I was walking around thinking about the practice that I had been doing, and I was looking at my feet as I walked. And then the next day, as I was sort of doing the practice, walking around the house, I was walking down the steps, and I looked down at my feet as I was going down the steps, and I suddenly had a flash of the same moment, of the moment of, in the dream, looking down at my feet while I was walking, and then here while I was doing this practice to bring forth the dream, looking down at my feet, and there was this sort of merging. And that started me with this kind of practice, this interdimensional smuggling, which sort of goes both ways, right? Lucid dreaming is a way of bringing this world, or lucid dream practice. Like there's a really well-known lucid dream practice where during the day, something to promote lucid dreams, where during the day you look at your hands really often, just get into the habit of just being like, You know, and once the action becomes something that you're doing a lot, you'll just automatically do it, and then in the dream, you'll do it. And then they'll do something weird, and you'll be like, oh, I'm dreaming, right? It's a really good way of inducing lucid dreams. So with lucid dream practices, you're grabbing symbols from the waking world and bringing them into the dream. Or you can do it the other way. So I have one of my dream tropes is that I am barefoot in inappropriate places. I'm on the African savannah, or I'm in the Icelandic Cultural Center. That's really a dream I had, right? I'm barefoot and everyone is all nicely dressed, and you know, and I'm like, okay, or I'm in the snow. And so one of the things that I do to work with these dreams, whatever, is I go inappropriately barefoot. You know, so I live in the city, and I just will take my shoes off and walk around in places where people are like, it's just people aren't really barefoot, and I will just go inappropriately barefoot as a way of kind of bringing the image and sort of breaking down the world and kind of seeing what happens. So, and it's really good practice with mystical experience, with psychedelic experiences. So, interdimensional smuggling, that's one way. Hypnagogic inspiration, that's another good way. I'm going to take a little side note here and talk to you about sleep and dream cycles. Because if you really want to learn to work with your dreams, so look, we have a parade. That's so nice. I'll try to be as loud as the parade. So, if you really want to work with sleep and dream cycles, with dream, it's very useful to understand your sleep and dream cycles. I have a little chart, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it, and then at the end, when you come up to get your own Narragen, you can also look at the chart and talk about it a little bit more. But basically, you sleep in 90-minute cycles. So, and it varies slightly for people, but more or less, this is how it works. Every 90 minutes, you coast to the surface of being awake, and then you go back to sleep again. Right? So in every one of, and this is a 7.
Do you want to just take a break till they go by?
I can hear, but I'm close. You know?
I can hear.
Oh, all right.
Can you hear back there? Okay. It's festive.
Fun.
Okay. Okay, so,
They may be a little while.
yeah, maybe a little while.
Can you do it like a rap? Because
I'll do it time.
yeah.
So you sleep in 90-minute cycles. They look so cute. Okay. And if you learn your own cycles, you'll learn where your best dreaming happens. So the first thing that happens when you're falling asleep is this thing called hypnagogia. So when you're awake, basically what's going on is alpha waves. Okay, and alpha waves run at 18 to 13 hertz, and that's cycles per second. And alpha waves are the basic background pattern sound of being awake. You know, so you're running alpha waves, unless you're in deep meditation or whatever, but it's pretty basic. So what happens during hypnagogia is it's the process of your brain waves changing from alpha to theta. So it's a very unstable time, right? And the brain waves do all sorts of crazy things during hypnagogia. It's a very, very rich period of sleep. And it's more than anything, the time of hypnagogia really varies for people. So those of you who take longer to fall asleep probably have more experience with hypnagogia than those of us who fall asleep quickly. I don't get to spend much time in hypnagogia because I'm a very skilled sleeper. But my spouse, who has a lot of problems sleeping, actually has a very rich hypnagogic dream experience. So if you have a lot of weird, interesting dream imagery as you're falling asleep, that's hypnagogia, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. After hypnagogia, you move into sleep stage 2. And sleep stage 2 is, that's when you have theta waves, right? And this sleep is like 45 to 55% of adult sleep. And this is the sleep that, this is the restorative sleep. So this is the sleep that you actually need to live. And you know how they say that if you don't let people sleep, they go crazy? It's actually if you don't let people go into stage 2 sleep, that makes them crazy. So
It's not REM? I always thought it was REM.
it's not. It's stage 2 sleep. So you can actually go without REM. Stage 2 sleep you can't go without. It's the restorative stuff. It's what you need. And it's more than half of your sleep. And then in the earlier parts of the night, you go through stage 3-4 sleep. Now stage 3-4 sleep, which is I know weird because that's 2, but it used to be 2 and now they just group it in 1. And it's very, very, very slow brain waves. It's 0.5 to 4 hertz. And it only happens at the beginning of the night. And this is the sleep stage where you have sleep paralysis. You're running and you can't run, or false awakening, or a lot of arousal disorder, which in the dream world means you thought you woke up, or a lot of sleepwalking will happen here. Night terrors, people who have night terrors. This is often stage 3-4. Very, very slow, deep wave, and really that's when your brain most shuts down. And then once you get past your second cycle of sleep, so after you've been asleep for about 3 hours, then all your sleep is cycling back and forth between stage 2 sleep and REM. And there's hypnagogia in the very beginning of the first 2 stages of the night, but mostly it's at the beginning. And then there's this 3-4 only in the first 2 stages, and there's REM also. And people who are pretty avid dreamers, like I often remember 3 or 4 dreams a night, you're often remembering dreams from each one of these REM cycles. But once you're past 3 hours, then all it is stage 2 sleep and REM. And at every sleep cycle, the REM cycle increases. So this is a 7.5-hour sleep. If you sleep 9 hours like I do, then your last cycle of sleep, your last hour and a half, is going to be mostly REM. So most of the dreams that you have are from really late night or really early morning. You dream in every one of these sleep cycles, by the way. Dream happens in all of these. But the easiest to remember and most vivid dreams happen in REM. And then at the very end is hypnopomnia. And that's hypnagogia in reverse. That's your brain waves going from theta back up to alpha, another strange, unsteady, and that's my favorite thing ever. Actually, is hypnopomnia. It's just like lying there in that strange experience of sort of coming to again. So this is really useful stuff if you're trying to work with your dreams. So one way to work with your dreams is to work actually directly with hypnagogia. And hypnagogic, people have pretty rich hypnagogic practices. So both for art and for thought. So 2 really good examples of people who work with hypnagogia who actually developed on their own the same practice is Thomas Edison and Salvador Dali. And the practice is, Salvador Dali's is really the most clear. Though Edison did basically the same thing. He would sit in a chair when he was drowsy, holding like 2 metal balls, and he would let himself drift in hypnagogia. And then as soon as he left hypnagogia and hit the dream phase, of course he would drop the balls, and it would wake him up. And then he would immediately do the sketch of what he had in the hypnagogic vision. Thomas Edison did the same thing, and that's where the seeds of most of his inventions came from. And he would immediately write all these notes about what he had just perceived in the hypnagogic state. So if you're looking for a way to work with your dreams, hypnagogic practices are a really, really good, easy way if you can't sleep more in your life. And of course, the number one way to have a more vivid dream life and to have better dreams, if you're going to be doing dream work, is really to sleep more. I mean, and I know that that's a pretty difficult order for most of us in kind of modern world. So, so hypnagogic practices are a really good way of doing some pretty deep dream work without actually having to sleep more. Another very interesting way of going about dream work is to work with lucid dreaming. A lot of different paths toward this. So the Tibetan Buddhists have been cultivating lucid dream practices for a very long time, and it's a very deep practice. The way that you get into it, I'll just give you the beginning because it's very involved, is by meditating on a red glowing Om at your heart center, or an A if you can't keep an Om clear in your head, and feeling the warm feeling around it and feeling it vibrating, and then as you're going to sleep, once you can get good at that meditation, doing that meditation, and then that keeps your attention honed and brings on lucid dreams. And you do the meditation all the time, all through the day. Now, the goal of the Tibetan Buddhists is to promote lucid dreaming, but for them, the idea about promoting lucid dreaming is that you're always trying to maintain waking consciousness. It's a very intense practice because what they do is, once they begin to be able to lucid dream, they do meditations in their dreams. And these are like super complex visualization practices in yogic postures, so they're like, like you're floating up in the air while actually like visualizing these like, multi-armed deities in great detail. And the idea is that you develop a consciousness so fine that you never lose it. So even while you're falling asleep, even at the depths of sleep, no matter what, and ultimately onto when you die. And of course that's the ultimate goal, is that your consciousness is so fine, that it's so razor, that you never lose it, and then you stay conscious through death. And there are some, Ken Wilber actually, but there are also some Tibetan Buddhist lamas who say they have not lost a moment of consciousness in years. That's one way of working with it.
I just have a question. If you have the experience of being conscious in the dream, but you can't control it, is it a lucid dream?
Yes.
Okay.
Another way of working with lucid dreams is really an exploration of what is reality. Right now, Stephen LaBerge is the guy that kind of blew open the idea of lucid dreaming in Western culture. He's a scientist. He was a doctoral student at Stanford and a lucid dreamer. Now, lucid dreaming is really ancient. I mean, Aristotle reported lucid dreams, and people have been reporting them all through history. But science sort of said, oh, that's ridiculous. There's no such thing. And so what Stephen LaBerge did, starting with himself as the test subject, and then gathering some other people who were avid lucid dreamers, is he brought them into the Stanford Sleep Lab, and he hooked them up onto like EEGs and other weird machines taped to them, and he got them to do things in their lucid dreams while being monitored. So there was a signal that they were about to start doing what they were going to do, and it was left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Registers both to the observer and to the EEG machines. And then they have already decided while they're awake that first they're going to count to 10, then they're going to do 10 jumping jacks, then they're going to sing opera, and then they're going to fly. And then they signal that they're done by going, okay, left, right, done. So Stephen LaBerge was actually able to communicate with people in the dream world. And therefore proved the existence of lucid dreaming. And then these people started experimenting with kind of what is the nature of reality, what's happening to your mind when you're dreaming as opposed to your mind when you're awake. They discovered a lot of really interesting things. For example, if you do a headstand while you're awake, certain parts of your brain light up. If you do a headstand when you're dreaming, the same parts of your brain light up. If you imagine doing a headstand, no, right? And then there's also, Stephen LaBerge is actually fairly deeply mystical in some ways, and has done a lot of exploring with, like, you know, what is reality, what is fear, what is sort of perception. And then there's been a lot of recent work of working with post-war PTSD sufferers using lucid dreams as a way of having them generate whatever it is, the terror or the fear in a lucid dream, and then being able to face it. There's a lot of really intense practices around lucid dreaming. Then there's also just the idea of developing your own practice, like figuring out how the dream moves you. So I have a practice that I've been doing for about 18 years now, that I started doing when I was in New York, when I lived in New York, and do now in my neighborhood in San Francisco. And it's a psychogeographical practice. It's called the Urban Dreamscape. And what I do is using active imagination and visualization, I overlay the dream onto the architecture of the city around me. So how it works is I wake up in the morning and I get the dream in my head. Maybe I write it down. Sometimes I write down dreams, sometimes I don't. I remember a lot of them. And then I go and I walk around the neighborhood, and I look for some place to kind of strike my mind. Something that seems, okay, that's the place. I just know when I see it. And then I take the dream and I break it down into sections. So I had this dream where I was in like a student quad at a college, and then I was taken up into a spaceship, and then I realized I was one of the aliens, and I was having a conversation with one of the fellow aliens, and we were going to be abducting all of these college kids from this quad where I had just been, and I felt really bad about it. And my fellow alien said, you spent too long with the humans. So, okay, that dream. I live in San Francisco, and I live near Kaiser Stadium, which is a stadium. And it has this beautiful Art Deco ticket counter in the front from the 40s. And so I placed this dream on that location. So the way that it works is I break the dream down. So there's being in the student quad, and then there's going up into the spaceship, and then there's having the conversation with the other alien, and then me feeling bad, the feeling of like feeling bad, these students, and then him saying, yeah, too long with the humans. So I break it down into the component parts. So I stand there in front of the ticket counter, and I mentally associate each part of the dream with the architecture so that the scan of my eye will reproduce the dream, right? So over top of like the ticket window is the student quad thing. And then going up to the really interesting roof, there's this like nice window pane feature going up to the roof, is going up into the spaceship. And then going along the edge of the roof that has this like kind of decor thing is me feeling bad, and then going up this, like, there's a sign there, is, the conversation with the alien, and then, then there's the fence going into Kaiser Stadium, and that's where the final part is. So I stand there for a good long time, and I mentally associate each image with the architecture. And this is methodology I took from Art of Memory, which is a very ancient mnemonic system. If you want to know more about that, you can ask me later. And from Australian Aboriginal Dreamtime practices. There's a very, very beautiful practice of the Australian Aboriginals, which has to do with sort of dream and interweaving of story into the land. And so whenever I go, so basically what happens is my neighborhood becomes my dream journal. So the dreams are woven into the neighborhood. And I'll be walking along and I'll be like, I'll look up at some sign, I'll be like, oh yeah, there's that dream with the whales and the businessmen, or Oh yeah, there's the pipe that has those really officious ants who kept sending me all these documents with markings on them or whatever. And in my neighborhood, I have like these 15 years of layers of dreams sort of woven into the neighborhood, and it really starts to break down the space between inside and outside. What is my own Aristotelian inner world of my own experience, and then what is the city that I live in, which is overlaid with that experience, and then how then I take that city and then re-internalize it. So it becomes this very interesting cycle. A lot of the dream. Do I need a mic?
Yeah, sure.
This always meant, strangers and the night. I was just so weird holding one of these. I'm a big fan of open-ended practice, of really getting into the practice and seeing what happens. So with Oneironauticum, different people participate for different reasons. Some people are looking for healing dreams. Some people are looking for lucid dreams. A lot of people are looking for lucid dreams. People are looking for oneiromancy, which is divination through dreams. People are looking to contact other dreamers in the dream world. There's the group. There are now a couple of groups that actually meet in person for Oneironauticum. And there's one group that meets in Australia, which I like because that means on both poles of night of the same day, there's a group sort of holding down the space. And the group in Australia is actually, what they're trying to do is meet each other in the dream world. They believe that, the dream world is actually a realm where they can meet each other. But I'm very interested in open-ended practice. So what we're going to do with Oneironauticum tonight is just try these oneirogens and see what happens and report what happens with you. And some of them have sort of more intent involved with them, and some of them don't. So I'm gonna talk about what these oneirogens are a little bit. So over here is Kalia Zakatachichi. You can just call it Kalia because Kalia Zakatachichi is a mouthful. And it is an herb, and it's used by the Chantal native people of southern Oaxaca for oneiromancy, divination through dreams. And the Chantal people believe that dreams happen in the realm where their gods or divinities also live. And if you use the Kalia with intention toward getting some sort of divination, then you can meet the gods in the dream world, and they'll answer your question. So if you're going to use the Kalia, people often will have a question or something that they're trying to seek. I have it in two forms here. One of them is a tea, and one of them is soaked in alcohol. I'm going to warn you, it's some of the nastiest, most bitter stuff you will ever have had. But it's really effective. We've worked with it a lot in Oneironauticum. People also smoke the dried herb. I don't have any tonight for that. Right behind me here is mugwort. The active ingredient in mugwort is thujon. It's the same as the active ingredient in absinthe. And mugwort is really good for very vivid psychedelic dreams. You're working with the scent. So I have little funnels here and sachets, and you can make yourself a little dream pillow to put by your head at night. There have been some really good recent studies about the effect of scent on dreams. There was a really good article recently in the New York Times where they did a bunch of research with dreamers where they exposed them to really pleasant smells like roses, and then other dreamers they exposed to really unpleasant smells like sulfur. And the people who had the roses had very pleasant dreams, not necessarily involving roses, and the people who had the sulfur had really icky, kind of unpleasant dreams. It's very interesting, the relationship of the senses when you're sleeping. And sense things can make really powerful onarogens. One night at Onaronauticum, we worked with a recording called Somnium. And this dude named Robert Rich, who's a musician, in the 80s, used to do concerts for dreamers. And he would, people would show up around 11 with their sleeping bags, and they'd go to sleep, and then he would play his concert, his 7.5 hour concert, and it was meant to induce vivid dreams. And he had a deep awareness of this sleep cycle. And what he was trying to do is to keep people right at the edge of consciousness and asleep, which is sort of hypnagogia, hypnopopnia land. And so in the recording, where it's really in points where you're closer to awake, the music gets really, really soft. And when you're in the deepest periods of sleep, it's really loud and raucous. So I, for example, woke up a couple times in the night and there was no sound. And it was at my normal sort of cresting places, and I was like, oh, is the music over? What happened? And as I was laying there, it would sort of start to come back, and I was like, oh, that was just a quiet part. Other people got woken up by the loud crashing music from their deeper sleep. But it was a really interesting thing that happened, because we were having this Onaronauticum in David and Vibrata's very spacious loft area. And it's 3 stories in this loft, but you know, the ground floor and then the second floor is only a part of the floor over here, and the third floor is only a part of the floor over here. So it's a really big open space. And there's about 16 of us there, all sleeping around the loft. Unbeknownst to us, somebody had, there's a water cooler at the very bottom, farthest away from where I was in the loft bed at the very top corner. At the very bottom, there's like a water cooler, and somebody had left it a little bit open, and all night long it was dripping, just a little, and then every once in a while, as it emptied, it would go, you know, like water coolers do. And there were 2 people who were sleeping near the water cooler, and they were aware of what was going on, but nobody else really was. But every single person dreamed of water. I had a dream of being on the ocean in this VW bug that was a boat in the rain, and David had all these different pools and all these different buildings. Everyone dreamt of water. So the effect is really clear. So sensory things, scent and sound can be really powerful. And actually also for men, when men go into REM, they usually get erections. And so there's a device called the Dream Director, and one of the things it does is it has a little Velcro thing that guys can sort of put around them, and when you get an erection, when you're sleeping, it sets off REM, and then it plays like a little song or something to go into your REM sleep. So there's a lot of things that you can learn about the physiology of what's happening with dreams to really promote that. So the mugwort is really good for sense. And over here is galantamine. Galantamine, and this is the organic form, it's red spider lily. Galantamine is a drug that's used to treat Alzheimer's patients. And what happens with Alzheimer's patients is that they start to get a breakdown in acetylcholine. And so galantamine doubles your production of acetylcholine. But acetylcholine is also one of the major things in producing and maintaining REM sleep. So if you're going to try the galantamine, which is really good, galantamine is really particularly good for inducing lucid dreams. And actually, Stephen LaBerge, who I know, is the one who turned me on to galantamine and first gave me my galantamine. And that's one of the things that he does when he's trying to train people to lucid dream, which is what I was doing with him. And you have to, the trick, though, with the galantamine is it's best to take around here, which is like 5 hours into sleep, right when you're moving into your heavy periods of REM sleep. So if you're going to take the galantamine, the thing to do is to set your alarm for like 5 hours after you go to sleep. Wake up, take this is a good dosage to take one of these pills, and then go back to sleep. And as you're going back to sleep, if you remember any other dreams that you were having before that same night, really try to get back inside of that dream and think about it. Like, really try to drift back into that dream space as you're going back to sleep with the galantamine. And it really is good for producing vivid dreams. Another actually interesting thing about the dream cycle is in these early stages of dream, your frontal cortex, which is the thing that is used for logic and planning and like work, all of that stuff, is still really active. So the dreams that you have in the earlier part of the night tend to be more dreams about your memories for the day. And if you're having like work anxiety dreams or those kinds of dreams, they tend to happen more in the earlier part. And the longer you sleep, and as you start to get into longer REM cycle, that part of the brain actually shuts down. It doesn't send any more signals, right? And that's when you start to get away from processing the day and you start to get deeper into your Aristotelian inner world. So this is a really good time for dreams that aren't about your day or aren't about your anxiety dreams. This is untrue in people who have depression or situational depression. They've done studies where someone's spouse dies or whatever, and those people who are pretty depressed and have pretty bad dreams, that doesn't happen. That part of the brain stays active and the dreams are unpleasant and often just full of the day and the anxiety of the day. So if you've ever been like really heavy on a project or you're having a pretty hard time, going through a kind of hard time in your life, sometimes you'll notice that your dreams are about that more in the night. That's kind of what's going on. But the galantamine is really good to take here at hour 5 when you're starting to get into really deep REM and when your brain is letting go of all the logic and all of the planning. So you can have your choice of any one of these, and I think I have enough so that you can probably take one and take one for a friend if you want as well, depending on what it is you want to take. A few words about doing this in this kind of festival environment. I've done On Aeronauticum, I've done this kind of thing often at these kinds of festival environments. The truth of the matter is if you're not going to sleep, then it's probably not worth doing tonight. If you are going to sleep, great, do it. If you're not going to sleep tonight, then just take it, and then just take it whenever it is you do next sleep. So before we move into actually coming up here and gathering up the onairgen of our choice, does anyone have any questions?